Hello, folks. Good morning. Welcome to another episode of JSN Invest. In this episode, we'll be looking at a sector that has been of interest for quite some time now, which is the Indian port space, right? So, if you guys remember, some time back we had done a deep dive on the Niti Aayog report on chemicals, and even in that report, one of the key themes that emerged was ports as a proxy to play Indian trade, right? So, this report pretty much expands on that. Uh, Kind of trying to solidify the investment case for investing in ports, and then kind of covers the two large listed port companies in India as well, right? So we thought we'll kind of cover that for our retail users and investors, so that you can kind of understand that space better, right? So Indian ports effectively is a proxy to Indian exports and imports. So basically a proxy to growing Indian trade. And if you look at Indian contribution, trade contribution as a percentage of global trade, that has kind of consistently been improving, right? So, for context, in 2014, Indian exports as a percentage of the global exports were around 2%. That has now moved up to 2.5%. So, it looks like a small increase, but as a part of the large global trade ecosystem, it's a substantial improvement, right? And similarly for imports, we've gone from 2.3% in 2014 to 2.7% now, right? So consistently improving on the trade front, and obviously because our external trade comes in primarily through our ports, ports become a natural beneficiary to this, right? For context, if you look at the volumes that Indian ports have been processing, our non-major ports, which are the smaller ports in the country, have been growing volumes at north of 9%, with our major ports growing volumes at around 5% or so, right? So, good steady growth in volumes in our broader port network, and especially in the smaller port ecosystem as such, right? In the ports ecosystem has also seen a lot of improvements and efficiencies coming, right? So, if you remember, a few years back, one of the key issues that people had with Indian ports was the processing time was too high, right? So, effectively, if a ship came in to kind of unload all of the containers out of the ship and the ship to leave, that turnaround time was quite high, right? And that now has kind of continuously been improved, with the likes of Adani now doing it at less than 1 day for a turnaround, right? So that has been kind of consistently improving, and obviously that will be a good boost not only to greater volumes at ports, but even for the India manufacturing story, right? So, just a side kind of move here. Effectively, if you want manufacturing in India to grow, we have cheap labor, but you need cheap logistics and cheap power, right? These are the two major things kind of holding us back right now, other than the land acquisition laws, political things, and stuff like that, right? So, good logistics and cheap logistics are a key for having good manufacturing in the country, and this has historically been a weak spot for India, right? So, as the port networks improve, as the turnaround time there improves, broadly your logistics efficiencies, etc., improve as well. And what has also happened is that as your infra in the country grows, these ports are now much better connected with the mainland as well, right? So, that makes kind of not only global trade, but even domestic trade much more efficient, right? So, for context, a lot of the minerals, coal, etc., that is mined in Jharkhand, etc., is transported via the sea route to southern states like Tamil Nadu, etc., where they are then kind of used for power processing and stuff like that, right? And that kind of happens via the port route as well, because that is a much more efficient route than sending it via train, right? So, these sorts of efficiencies have kind of kicked in, making the Indian port space especially attractive as such, right? So, with the broad thesis for the space laid out, we then kind of dive into the two listed companies there, which are Adani Ports and JSW, right? Obviously, in this session, none of the material that we cover is a recommendation, but just trying to understand the key differences between the two port players as such, right? So JSW So both of the port players on kind of operating fronts are very, very healthy businesses, right? So JSW will operate at, say, close to 50-52% sort of operating margins. Adani will be at closer to 58 to 60% sort of operating margins, right? So healthy EBITDA numbers uh, have been kind of improving on the leverage front. So both of these have been kind of deleveraging. Adani, I think, is now at 1.8x net debt to EBITDA. Similarly, uh, your JSW ports is at around 0.9x, right? So, good, steady kind of deleveraging in both the businesses, and obviously both are kind of good growing businesses, right? A key kind of factor with respect to JSW is that a lot of their business still comes from the core JSW group business, right? So, around 50% plus of the volumes that they process is from JSW group volumes itself. And while that is not too much of an issue per se, that volume is not about to go away anytime soon, that does create kind of risk, right? You do not want kind of too much concentration driven by any one particular player. And when anyone is kind of analyzing a business like that, that is one of the first things that kind of strike you as such, right? To their credit, they have been obviously trying to actively increase the non-group part of the business, and over the last few years, the non-group part of the business has grown faster as well. That being said, the concentration risk for JSW still kind of exists as such, right? With respect to Adani, the business has been kind of executing quite well. They've grown market share from around, say, 12% odd in 2014. They're now at 27% market share in the port space. The second largest player, which is JSW, is at around 7 to 8% odd or so, right? So, substantially ahead of competition in terms of market share. And what it has been kind of very successful at is basically acquiring and integrating smaller ports, right? So, obviously, because the port network on both coasts is extremely fragmented, for a good port operator, you need to have the ability to go out there, acquire a port, and then turn around the business, right? Add efficiencies, improve the margins in that kind of port, and make it more attractive from a financial point of view, right? And Adani, to its credit, has been able to do that. Two major things kind of going well for it. One is historically it was a very West India focused port system, right? They've now made a couple of good acquisitions on the eastern coast as well, and the kind of turnaround thesis that we discussed, which is basically its ability to go out there, acquire ports, and then increase efficiency of those ports to kind of improve the margins that those sorts of ports operate in, has been kind of quite impressive as such, right? And obviously, having the might of the Adani brand name helps them kind of integrate these sorts of things quite well as well, right? So, politically, you could have any sort of view when we're kind of looking at a business as an investor. We need to kind of see how they've been executing, and to their credit, they've been executing quite phenomenally as such, right? So that was a brief overview of the port space, why it looks interesting, the kind of story that is played out till now, and obviously as India focuses on increasing manufacturing, on increasing exports, the port space will become even more important, right? Uh, if you want to kind of dive deeper into this, we have another video on the Niti Aayog report on the chemical space. You could check that out as well. That has a lot more insights, and other themes are also covered. So you can kind of go through that. And obviously, if this video added value, please consider sharing it in your network with your other investor friends on your groups, etc. We're still a very, very nascent channel, still at around 750 odd subscribers, looking to get to 1,000 by end of this month and 5,000 by end of August. So please kind of help us in our journey and become the first few followers for this channel as such. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.